Cool. Welcome to the Tempo Community Call, first of 2025. I believe, the very first of the year, January, and our agenda is quite short, I think, mainly because, like a lot of folks, we've been on break for the past few weeks. I myself have only been in 2 days, I think, in the past 3 weeks, so I spent this morning mainly catching up on emails and all the normal stuff. So I barely know what's happening, but we will today review the 2.7 RC0 release notes, which should be exactly the same or very similar to the Tempo 2.7 actual release notes. Give people an idea of what's coming up. I believe we intend to release this next week, assuming we don't find anything too terrible. And then after that, we will get into like an AMA style thing. If you all are interested in any questions about Tempo, operating it, or what our plans are, or how to do something in TraceQL, or whatever comes to mind, I suppose, is all good. And apparently, the first item on the agenda is to wish everyone they had a good break. I do not know who wrote that, but I will now wish you all a good break. Marty did. Okay. Hey, Marty. Good idea. Tempo 2.7. So we were maybe a bit late on this. We do try to do it for a year, so 1 a quarter every 3 months. I think we're a couple of weeks late on this, but not terrible. I think it just kind of turned into, did we want to shove it in before the break at the last second, or just wait till we got back? And we all voted on just wait till we get back. So here we are, we're back. And it's time for the Tempo 2.7 release. So I'm going to go through this. I was just dealing with an escalation right before it, so did not have time to dig into this before, so it might be a little rocky getting through here. If any team members have thoughts about things they want to highlight, please jump in. Otherwise, I am going to just kind of mention the things that I'm aware of that make the most sense to me. And I think this is an important deprecation here, and it's the first item on the release notes for a reason, which is we are going to deprecate the serverless features. We have found internally they are more trouble than they are worth. And we would prefer spending all that time that we are keeping them up to date, wrangling all the CI processes related to them. We'd rather spend that time just making Tempo better, and we think we can achieve a better outcome investing in queryers and just TraceQL performance in other ways. So this was initially added back on the old block format with the old way of searching, and we felt it was necessary then to achieve any kind of reasonable speeds. But with the newer format, with the Parquet file, or with the Parquet, the block format, things are so much faster that we believe this is just an unnecessary burden on the team. So I believe in the next release, we'll just have all this code deleted, and we're moving on from serverless. Good luck, serverless. You're way better in batch processing and event processing. Breaking changes. I have quite a few listed here. I don't think any, or most of these are super concerning, but I'll walk through these real fast. We added a maximum spans per span set. A lot of these will not impact you. Carlos did that, our newest team member. Right now you can ask Tempo if you do a TraceQL query for 200,000 spans per span set. And if it finds a trace with that many spans that match, it will do its best to return all of them, which makes Tempo sad. So this is mainly a protection kind of setting that we use in cloud to prevent people from doing exactly what I just said and overwhelming the query path by returning, whatever, hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes of data in one query. I don't think this is really going to impact anybody. It's related to remote write on our metrics generator. I believe we are now just honoring the config instead of whatever's in the actual context. Hey, Oscar. Awesome that you're using Grafana Cloud Tempo. This will go over OSS Tempo stuff here. Everything you see here is probably already in cloud or close to it. And then at the end of this, you are more than welcome to ask cloud questions. That's absolutely encouraged here. So questions about TraceQL or how to use Tempo is all good, as well as as well as covering OSS Tempo here. Okay, moving forward, we thank you to Andreas, who's on this call, finally got away from open tracing, which the old Jaeger SDK, which was deprecated for years. So now we're fully on the newer open telemetry tracer. Read these issues or these PRs if you are concerned. You can still use the old style exporter because open telemetry supports Jaeger. You just need to do a little configuration. So that's what you would do if you're actually tracing tempo. I think this is maybe one of the most important ones, though. UNA upgraded our OpenTelemetry collector dependency, which changes the behavior to only listen on localhost instead of the all interfaces 0000. So if you depended, you might, and it's quite likely you depend on this behavior, depending on how your configuration is done. And you will need to configure this perhaps directly if you want it to listen on all interfaces, or maybe a specific interface if that's important to you. So this is a pretty standard security change where you want to, by default, not listen to all interfaces. You want to be able to like specifically say which ones or configure which interfaces to listen on. This affects the distributor receiver configurations. Please see this couple links here. And does this affect the Helm chart? I think we determined this does not affect the Helm chart. Is that right? Because the Helm chart was already just putting zeros in.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so if you're deploying with the Helm chart, I don't know if anything's going to change. If you have your own deployment configuration, I would look closely at this. This will be called out in the blog post, as well as the release notes that Kim and Alex work on as well. So we should have more details on this, but I would keep an eyeball on this if you operate tempo.
Yeah, I think the issue is mostly if you keep the endpoint like empty, use a default value, the value changed in auto upstream. If you specify like a specific host name, it's not gonna change anything for you.
Okay, cool. We removed a config option that did nothing. I can't imagine anybody's using it. And then I think this one also will impact a lot of users. This is already in cloud. We switched to use the Prometheus fast regex, which has a lot of optimizations where it attempts to do matches before it even drops to the Go regex. And so all of your regexes should be faster, but the behavior will change. The behavior will change in a way that's consistent with Loki, Mimir, with Prometheus. So we think overall it's a positive change. We think it plays nicer with Grafana dashboards as well. Because all of Grafana dashboarding templating kind of behaves in a way that is consistent with Prometheus for obvious reasons. And so I think this change is overall good, but it will change behavior. So this query right here, span foo bar, used to be a substring search, and now it'll be an exact match search because all regexes are treated as if they are fully anchored. So you can kind of see this example here about what the behavior change was. From this to this, your regexes should be significantly faster. They should behave more predictably based on like just using the other similar databases. And hopefully you won't have to make major changes to the way you all use or operate tempo. I think this is overall a positive change, even if there's a little bit of rockiness adopting it. All right. Any other call outs there, team?
I was wondering, is anyone using cloud? I think this regex change would have already rolled out to cloud, and I was wondering if anybody noticed it. Cool.
A couple of our internal people noticed it because they asked why their dashboards changed. We did announce it in the cloud what's new thing. I wonder if we need a what's going to be new thing. I don't know. Some way to say, hey, in 2 weeks, something's going to change instead of that week. That's maybe a little jarring for some folks, but whatever. We can work on that separately. Changes. I've already gone over the breaking changes here. I don't know if there's anything in particular worth calling out. I think the changes are all pretty innocuous. Hopefully for the better. So features, we do have a few TraceQL features. Javi did some good work there. FAMs also did some good work here. So the instrumentation scope, which is a specific scope in OpenTelemetry, is now supported. So you can, it's a very strange scope. It basically, it's probably somewhat unused by you directly, but it injects like the instrumentation library and the version of that library. I think maybe the runtime version, I'm not sure. A couple of small details in there that might be useful to you. So you can now query that directly in TraceQL, which is cool. And then we added a couple of TraceQL metric features, so average over time. Yeah. And then maybe some features related to operating tempo. Anything worth calling out here on the features? I think this is an interesting one, although maybe difficult to parse. If you operate tempo, you can use this to, this is a very long PR description, but to track the bytes per second. Is that right, Marty? Bytes per second based on any configurable labels?
Right. So if you want to, if you would like to understand your tracing volume better, this would let you split it down based on any attributes in the data. What it means is it's separate from the metrics generator span metrics, which you probably would have already been using to do this before. So there's the span size metric, but this allows you to cut it by different attributes. So you don't have to like interrupt your span metrics config or try to find one config that works for everything. So it's kind of a specialized feature. Maybe if you really have like subtenants or internal tenants and you really, you want to understand what your volume is coming from.
So we use this internally for what Marty's saying there, like a cost attribution style thing, right? Where we can assign based on labels. Let's say you want to know which teams are sending how many bytes. So you have a specific label in your traces, and then we break down bytes per second per that label. So this might be useful to operators. Did Papa have a question?
I think this is cool. So can I like figure out which namespace is sending how much data, or which even deployment if I have those labels?
Yeah, you could use resource set namespace or whatever. And so you could use that as a label, and you have to, it's a separate scrape endpoint. So you'd have to set up an additional scrape on the distributors after you enable it, because just to keep the operational metrics away from like the customer type style metrics, like tenant style. But yeah, for sure. So
That's
it would
exactly
be
what
more
we're doing.
accurate than the other metric as well. So the span size metric is not as accurate because it's just counting the spans themselves, and it's missing all of the non-span data like resources, instrumentation, scope. So this one would be more accurate also.
So definitely a feature operators might be interested in, so they understand who's spending money basically in their tempo cluster, and then you can go ask them questions. Cool. Other than that, I don't know. We have a large number of performance improvements. In fact, I would call this release mostly a bug fix and performance improvement release. So there are a couple features sprinkled in there, but there's just an enormous number of improvements. You can see Marty's got a couple of TraceQL queries with very solid descriptions here. Maybe we should improve those. I'll go look at that. We should leave these up to features. I thought we had more than one TraceQL metrics: min over time, max over time, new TraceQL metric operators, which are cool. So I'll put those up in features. And then Suraj spent a lot of time working on our tag endpoints, our metadata endpoints. So lots of work improving the performance of those, added caching on disk in the ingesters, added all kinds of neat little performance improvements in the way we do distinct collection of the strings. So a lot of nice ones, we feel like. Ingesters, we saw a 20 to 30% reduction in heap size on our ingesters with some of the changes here, improving this behavior of allocations in our proto ingestion and marshalling. So yeah, primarily we hope that you see better performance, lower resource usage, and then a couple of these nice TraceQL features is the goal. Yeah, I'll move these up here, up to the top in a second here. All right. Any other changes the team wants to call out? Are we good there?
Oh, I'd like to call out the block index change from JSON to proto. So you'll see a different file in the backend if you're familiar with what tempo is flushing to the bucket. And the proto form, you should see better CPU and memory across query front ends, queries, compactors.
That's part of a
Especially
long struggle to improve our polling resource usage. Is that right?
Yeah, so especially in larger clusters, if you have several million blocks, you should see good savings from that.
Right. I think our largest cluster right now is 3 million blocks across all tenants, and the improvements over the last couple of releases have made that possible, including this one. So that's a good call out. A lot of query front-end improvements, I feel like, a lot of Alex. I spent some time, I think, in the early fall, making the query front-end more performant. Cool. All right. It looks like we do have a couple of AMA questions here, so I can walk through those. And then if anyone else wants to jump in, please do. And we will, and then if anyone else has questions, feel free to drop them in chat, or feel free to unmute and ask whatever you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter to us. So I'll just walk our way down through these. We are ingesting all traces from our service straight to Grafana Cloud's OTel endpoint. Tempo generates span metrics from those. We'd like to create a system where span actually generated from all traces, but all traces ingest in Tempo due to volume. Wow. Eunice here to talk about this. Perhaps only ingest tail sampled traces such as errors or high duration spans. See if I could set something like this up. So I'm going to mention more span metrics generated from all traces, but not all traces. Okay. So right, I'm going to mention potentially doing this in pipeline, but I'll hand it off to Unit 2 because they're doing a lot of work in this space as well. So we do have this easy button option if you just want to generate span or metrics from the traces you send us. But we understand that these are often heavily sampled and are only, somewhat representative of what's actually occurring. If you would like to generate metrics from a larger percentage of your traces, my current set of advice would be to use either Alloy or the Open Telemetry Collector, whatever you're using for your pipeline. Generate your metrics there, push them to Grafana Cloud, and then after that step, do your tail sampling or down sampling, and then push whatever you want to cloud traces. And then I'll hand off to Una.
Yeah, I think what Joe described kind of sums it up. The issue is if you have downsampling before generating the metrics, if it's like probabilistic sampling, you can reconstruct the sample rates. So like if it's like a constant rate of sampling, you can like reverse it, I guess, and like correct the metrics. But if you're doing tail sampling, it's just not possible because you kind of skew the ratios between spans. So it's like not possible to correct it anymore. And in that case, we recommend to do it, to generate the metrics before you downsample in the collector. This is a bit of an investment because you have to like run the generator, like the thing generating metrics on your own environment. But yeah, we're like aware that it's an issue and we're like trying to fix it in cloud. But yeah, it's like pending.
Cool. Upcoming. Keep your eye on the space, etc. Yeah, so right, we definitely have some work in this area, and we know this is a pain point for a lot of folks. Second question for AMA about alerting from here. So link to this. Maybe I should share my window some. Oh, am I getting called? Am I getting paged? Yes, I am getting paged. Can somebody go check the pager? Thanks. While I share this screen and tell our on-call thing that I'm acknowledging it. Everything is fine. There we go. Okay. It is not possible to generate directly generate traces from Tempo. I'd say it's on our long list, but we do have a lot of priorities before this. I would say right now, the absolute best path is to generate a metric from spans and alert on that metric. I think there's some question about what we would want to do. Maybe we need to start an issue where we collect some ideas, or perhaps just add your ideas to here. Recently, for the first time in ever, we have a dedicated PM for Tempo, and answering these kind of questions is their purview. His name is Alex. I don't think he's on this call, but if you add any details you have, any needs to this discussion, that would be a great place for us to collect, the things you're interested in doing, and then maybe try to prioritize a feature list for this. We want alerting too, but it's hard to just add alerting, right? There's a lot of things that might mean. So if you add your ideas here, it can help us, determine what to prioritize and what to add first, I suppose. And then, yes, the current recommendation would definitely be to do spans, or sorry, metrics from your spans and alert on those. Right. 2.7 released in tempo Helm chart. So yeah, we will release 2.7 next week, at which point generally someone from the community submits a PR before I get a chance to. So it generally happens like a couple days after, after we actually do the release. So yeah, I'd expect it sometime next week, or maybe early the week after in the Helm chart. Trace storage smaller, currently using sample rate and retention would be good. It would be good to see a tutorial on how to get storage ingestion breakdown by span trace name and sort by largest. So actually the feature we just mentioned would be really good for this, where you can specify if a span and trace name are important to you. I'm not sure we support trace name, but span name was important to you. You could see the bytes per span name. Can I switch to the doc again? Yeah, I can. You could do the bytes per span name. If you could also do it by team, perhaps. Any attributes on your span or your resource, like a team name or a application or a service or many different ways, a cluster, a cell, a region, literally anything in your attributes. So that feature we just mentioned, we can talk about some of the blog posts since there seems to be some interest in it. I would recommend looking at that. You can also, right now, get a sense of it, perhaps not exact, but get a sense of what's going on with, oh my God, I'm getting page creep constantly. What's going on, team? You can get a sense of it with metrics. So you can do like rate by, I hope this works. I assume this environment is set up correctly. So this is rating all spans by resource service name. And then we can just visually see this is like demo data, right? There's a service called user. It's creating the most spans, and then this mythical server. And so this is also an option, and it won't be exact, right? You're not getting bytes, which is different than, you're not getting exact bytes, but you're getting some information. You could do, let's say we want to home in on one service. We could do by span name, perhaps. So we can see, for this service, which spans are making, or which are the most common. So there's some options in TraceQL metrics right now that will help give you answers. For very exact answers, I would recommend looking at the new feature in 2.7 that includes like the bytes per whatever attribute name you want. Is it expected to see error logs constantly in tempo pods? Well, I don't know, hope not. Sometimes query on Grafana just hangs as flaky. That would recover in a few minutes, sometimes much longer. Some days queries runs with no issue. Our traffic trace ingestion speed should be similar. Query front-end queries about 10% of CPU minutes allocated. Rate is good. I think. Yeah, so if you're having issues with specific queries, maybe, do we have a good query optimization guide? There's definitely things you can do, maybe even kind of surprising things if you don't know the tricks per se, that will make your queries run significantly faster. If you have a lot of good data, like when it dies, yeah, that's for sure. When it dies, all queries die. If you are seeing some queries consistently slower than others, and you can collect good data around this, I would recommend filing an issue. Like, hey, we run this query and it takes a long time, and maybe give us some information about the number of blocks you have, the amount of resources used by your different components. And then we run this query and it's really fast and we feel like they're the same query, but we don't know why. If you're able to provide something like that in a GitHub issue or a discussion, I think I could help you. But just sometimes queries are slow. It's very hard for me to, diagnose sitting here without additional info. So if you did post something like that, myself or someone from the team would probably go back and forth, ask some questions, get some more data, and maybe we'd be able to help you out. Cool. Anything else? Any other thoughts, concerns, cares, worries? Nothing. Thanks, Oscar. I appreciate it. You're welcome. I am paid to do it, but it is fun also.
I think Pavel.
Oh, did Pavel have another question?
Says
I'm not sure if you answered. I was looking at something else, and you talked quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I have this use case that I'm working on. We want to provide like an RBAC on Kubernetes, so that people will be able to query only kind of spans from namespaces where they have access to. The way we want to implement it is through proxy, like put a proxy in front of Tempo that will do probably two things. For the get by trace, it's pretty simple. We will get a trace and remove all attributes from spans originating from not allowed namespaces. My question is like, how should we handle the queries through TraceQL?
Yeah, the place you'd run into problems, right, or a TraceQL query that didn't mention a namespace, so you wouldn't know, right, what namespace it came from and whether or not to exclude it. Something you could do is in the proxy append this to
Yeah,
the
like a list of namespaces the user has access to, or something like that.
If you append select resource namespace, then you would get the namespace back on every query, and you could, in a TraceQL query, then omit, whatever based on whatever your policies are. The problem is mainly, I think, going to be TraceQL metrics, because you did a TraceQL metrics query. I don't think there's any good way. You'd have to always add a by namespace or something, and then unaggregate the data. Because you'd be broken down by namespace, and then it would be a mess based on metrics query. I think the right way to do this would be to do it in Tempo, definitely. And we've talked about RBAC. It's difficult for us to prioritize it, but more and more folks are asking for it, so we want it too. I think our question right now is, what is the first thing we should implement with RBAC that meets needs and is, somewhat doable in the short term? This would obviously be a lot faster, right? If we pushed it all the way down to the query layer, where we could, in Parquet, just skip all rows with a set of namespaces, right? So I would like, if you are interested in that work, maybe creating an issue that details what you want. And this would be another good one to work with Alex on, because he is right now, I think, noodling RBAC and what we want to do as a first step for RBAC. So I think that's probably in our future in the next couple of quarters. And it would make more sense for us to work on that with you than, you to make a proxy, I think.
Thanks. I will book a ticket and we can take it from there.
I think it's the best way to start. My guess is, if we do some work on our side, you all talk about what you need. If Andreas or another Red Hat developer is interested in also helping with that, then I think we could get it done even faster. So if we work on it together, I bet we can get something we both want.
Perfect, thanks. We already started working on this. We wanted to have some MVP this quarter, essentially. But like, if we can create something more generic and have it directly in the backend, I think that's better long-term goal.
Yeah. Cool. Agree.
One more hacky way I can think of. Again, nobody please do this. But Tempo now has cross-tenant query. So you can have each team in like a separate tenant. You can do cross-tenant query, but again, only do this if you have like 5 teams.
Yeah.
Sorry, good. We want to have it like per namespace based, like align with like Kubernetes RBAC model.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then this is not the way. What I said. Forget what I said.
Cool. All right. Any other questions, team? I did kind of blow through those really fast, maybe too fast. Perhaps I should slow down. But I also want lunch. I'm hungry. All right. It is great to see you all in the year 2025. 2.7's coming out next week. Get excited for it. And we're moving forward with primarily our re-architecture. So expect to see that next community call. Maybe we'll give some more details on where we are on that and how much we've progressed. We've done some good work there, and I think we're quite excited about that. It's going to improve performance, reduce cost, and give you some more options on operating tempo. So everyone take care, and I will see you in whatever the next month is, February.
Okay, bye.
Bye, folks.